Does public education respect the fact that fathers are valuable leaders? We are going to talk about it tonight on the 8 Black Hands. Stay tuned. Welcome, fam, to episode 191 of the father-powered 8 Black Hands. It's your Sunday night professional development and your education church all wrapped up in one. It's Ray, Sharif, and Chris. And of course, all of you joining us on a Sunday night to talk about how we're going to get our 8 million Black kids in education. We have a very special guest tonight. Not going to get to that part yet. We're not going to get to the guest part yet. We're going to start first with the check-in with the brothers. I missed last week, and I had some things going on, and I have some things going on in life. So I had to miss it, so I wasn't here. But it's good for me to be back and to check in with you, brothers. So first, brothers, what's up? How y'all doing?
Good, man. Good to be back. Good to see y'all. Yo, Philly stomped New York today. I mean, that's always a beautiful thing. You know what I mean? Like that's
man.
You know, so it's a beautiful night to be a sports fan in Philly. And you know, and I think this topic, you know, for me is really you know, just really important. And at least I've experienced it in a very different way than I think a lot of places have. So, you know, excited to dive into that as well.
Son, father, uncle, brother, Ray,
young boy. You should have added youngin. Like that's
for people listening. Ray has a different name every week on his self. This is his name this week that he has listed, and you can't see it as a listener, but this is what he's calling himself.
So it's important to name all of these things, right? And the reason why it's important to name these things is because when you think about Black fatherhood, it's all encompassing, right? And so it's like you don't have to be someone's biological father in order to present as someone that is meaningful in someone's life, right? And so I'm waiting and super interested in unpacking how folks show up in the lives of youth without even having a title of being father. But then also, you know, you got some stepdads out here. You got folks that fall under this umbrella that we never really talk about and we never really give the flowers to. And so tonight is going to be dope because we're giving flowers to the dads that may not be in the household, but are definitely in the lives of their children.
Yeah. Can you add a slash and put Neff, you know, just in you know, it is a nod to me and our relationship.
He just said Neff. Like apparently,
Neff.
Yeah, like, apparently you're a nephew.
My Neff.
Probably Marvel and Menace.
Anyways, well, listen, that kind of takes us into the topic. But before we get there, I do want to start the way that we would normally start, just to do a learning check-in, because this is a learning show. So generally, I like to ask at the beginning, what did you study, read, or live this week that taught you something? And what could you share? Just something that you either studied, wrote about, read about, or that you lived, you know, you experienced this week that taught you a lesson.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So earlier this week, I wrote a little article on my Substack about how I, as a parent, choose schools for my kid. And so it just got me to thinking in terms of like folks that are like, oh, test scores are unimportant, or this is important. And like, you know, so I just, you know, wrote down a list of things that were important to me in terms of like when I choose schools for my kids. So if you guys, I can't put it in the comments because I don't have access to these new comments and stuff, but I will definitely put it on the Facebook in order for you guys to check it out.
Love it. Dope. Sharif.
Yeah. You know what? I had opportunity to do a little insight with my sister. So she wrote a piece about her experience of learning math as a student in Iran, and then how as a math teacher she implemented some of those same, strategies. And, one of the things, and I don't think we ever talked about it in depth. She's like, over 10, 15 years younger than me. So I don't think either one of us talked about our experience in school in Iran, like at least as a math class. But it was interesting. It was the same thing, even over a course of a decade. Like neither one of us saw an open-ended response. I mean, I'm sorry, a multiple choice kind of test or question until we got here, and then we both felt like, I remember going to high school, felt like it was cheating. I'm like, oh my gosh, the answer's right here, where we had been accustomed and developed as young math students to think problems through and prove your answer and write everything out. And so it was interesting to read her piece. And it was so similar to my experience of learning math and why students in America struggle with math so much, right? And what we can learn from other cultures that we may, that society looks at as, secondary or third world, where it's just like, yeah, but they got, who's actually third world when you look at who can do math, and those kind of things. So it was just really interesting to see, that we shared that experience, even though we hadn't really, spoken about it. So that was eye-opening.
I appreciate that, because math is boring. And, so I'm talking like, see, you guys like to talk as adults about these things. I'm talking from personal experience as a student who still feels traumatized by the episodic way in which math was taught. And how, like, I'm a person who needs context. One thing needs to lead to another. I need a story. I need the full story. I don't like bits and pieces. I don't like episodes of things. And telling me, oh, this will make sense to you 2 years from now. Man, come on. And then, I was older. So when I went on my fatherhood journey and I started thinking about this math stuff with my oldest, I forgot where I read it, but it was something that was talking about Singapore, and that their math books were like super thin and ours were just big, honking books or whatnot. I remember thinking, why couldn't I get the thin one? Why did I have to get the, anyways, America, that's why, because America. Before we jump in, here's my thing that I learned this week. It's not something that I learned really, but it was a reflection that I had that came up. There's this story out of Wisconsin, and it's the title of the story is Wisconsin Congressman calls TikTok digital fentanyl. And just the headline alone got me like hooked. I was like, what? Wait. So I did not know this. There are two congressmen, Rubio and I forgot the other guy's name from Wisconsin. They have a bill or something pending where they are attempting to basically outlaw TikTok in the United States. And upon doing some digging and whatnot, TikTok, the version that we have for our kids in the United States is not the version that the Chinese give their own kids. Yep. So the version that they have in China actually limits them to 40 minutes a day, and it has educational content and none of the nonsensical jumping off of roofs and stabbing yourself in the eye and like, any of that stuff that we have, all the vulgar kind of not serious stuff that we're pumping our kids with. So it's super addictive. It's super stupid. And it's popular. So if you wanted to do something to another country without like shooting a missile at them, like without releasing a bomb, get to their youth, get in the ear of the youth, get them addicted to something that they do for 24 hours a day and make it super stupid so that their brain deteriorates and that they don't ever get serious about anything. That'd be like an excellent thing. Now, that wasn't my full revelation. My full revelation is I'm kind of a lax dad on these type of things. As much as I get props for being a father and being a good dad, I do lots of stuff where I'm like, I have to reflect and think, there's this difference between being super lenient and being super tight. And there's this middle ground, and it's not ever easy to know where it is. And my reflection this week was I'm usually on the side of laissez-faire parenting. Like I don't like banning phones. I don't like taking away things. I don't feel like you develop, a resistance to anything by just somebody prohibiting you from having it. Right. Anyways, I know that never worked for me. So anyways, that was my reflection. I'm not the world's best dad. I got some things that I figure out along the way, and hey, it just is what it is.
I think it's Ron Johnson is the senator from Wisconsin, the bill.
Is that his name?
Yeah.
Would you say again, Ron Johnson?
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, we're going to look for the link and drop it into the comments. Again, it's called Wisconsin Congressman Calls TikTok Digital Fentanyl, which is a dope title. Makes me jealous that I didn't write that myself. Well, let's roll into our show tonight. We're talking about fathers again and fatherhood. This is a father-powered podcast. Black men, but you know what? If you are brown or Bayesian or white or Chinese, whatever you are, black, white, Puerto Rican, everybody just a freaking, it just be whatever you want it to be. This is still going to be good for you because you know what? As men across all different lines, we have stuff going on where we have to figure out this fatherhood thing. And then at the same time, relating it to education. We have educational leaders in my mind that don't always pay attention to fathers as an entity. We talk about parent engagement. We talk about, I think oftentimes we're talking about moms. We're not talking about dads, even when educationists are talking about us. Tonight, our guest is Harrison Peters, CEO of MCEL, which is Men of Color in Educational Leadership, and a former state turnaround superintendent in Providence, Rhode Island. God bless you. His drive for education was sparked by one 10th grade teacher who said that he was not college material, and another who said, I love you, I believe in you, and I refuse to let you fail. Listen to the difference between those two types of educators in the life of a Black man. I want to play a portion of this clip that introduces Harrison, and then we will bring him into the show on the other side of this. So if you guys will, let me know, thumbs up or thumbs down if you can hear this.
For UWF alum Harrison Peters, home is where the heart is.
The most pressing memory is just my grandmother and how hard she worked to raise two rambunctious boys.
A turbulent childhood and family crisis took young Harrison and his brother out of Houston, Texas, through some divine intervention to his grandmother's house on Lakeview Avenue in Pensacola, Florida.
She saw what could happen if I ensure that my grandkids get a good education. I think about all the tough lessons. I think about me being dropped off in the corner and trying to sneak in the house, and she's sitting right there on the porch. You know the rules. That street light right there, when it came on, you had better be home.
Peters grew up just blocks away from Pensacola High School, across the road from the A Street Park, a place where formal education and life lessons only the street can teach intersect.
A lot of my education came from this place. I spent many days and evenings and weekends right out here. There's a powerful learning that occurs out here. And there are some guys that I ran with and played with and sat on that bench right there and talked and joked with that didn't make it. And there were some that were. But there's a value that happens in the community.
Harrison's grandmother, Alberta, raised the boys as best she could and turned his education over to the faculty and staff at PHS.
Oh, look at him. Look at my man.
Coach.
How you doing, boy?
How you doing?
Good to see you, man.
Oh, man.
Good to see you. Looking like new money.
But Peters was still a ship without a sail, a class clown.
When I was a teacher, I would characterize my students as fruit. So I had my peaches, my plums, and my apples, and I had my coconuts. Needless to say, I was a coconut.
A 10th grade science teacher, Dr. East, called him out.
She said, boy, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, well, Doc, I'm tall, I play basketball, I'm pretty good. I'd love to go to college and play basketball. She looked at me and she said, boy, sit down. You're not college material. So I sat down.
Harrison loved basketball. He found a mentor and father figure in his coach, current PHS principal, David Williams.
I think I curried favor with the yearbooks there that year. Coach was my harshest critic, but he was my biggest supporter and my biggest cheerleader. And you don't always find that balance. And I remember he was giving me one of those tough conversations one time at the gym. He said, this person is giving up on you. This person is giving up on you, son. I'm not going to give up on you, but you had better get it together.
The sport connected him to coaches and teammates like current PHS boys basketball coach and fellow UWF alum Terrence Harris, building those lifelong relationships.
Y'all keep running. He said, well, how long we got to run? Well, you run until I get tired. And they're like, well, coach, you're not doing nothing. How you going to get tired? That's my point.
I love that so much. Let's bring in our guest tonight, Harrison Peters, CEO Leader, there's so much to unpack in that clip. I played it that far because I saw different things in the story about how you grew up, but it ends, there's a lot more that folks could go and look and watch in that video, but it ends with the relationships that you do need along the way, even when people are doubting you and even when people are underestimating you. If you could get to those folks who can pump you up and show you the way, you still can make it. And here's the thing, that to Ray's point earlier, when he said that, Ray's name that he has up right now is son, father, uncle, brother, whatnot. We talk about fatherhood as if it's a destination, but I like to talk about fathering as a verb, as a thing that you can do, even when someone's not your own child. Fathering is something that we all have a certain quantity of in us, and you can do it as coaches, as teachers, as principals, as friends, as a friend of a friend's dad, who sees something in somebody or whatnot. We should always be on the lookout for fathering, the potential to father. Harrison, thank you for joining the show, brother.
Thanks for having me. Really, really excited to be here.
So tell us the rest of the story. What happened? So you found some good positive influences. How did you make it to here, to where you are now today?
Probably if you listened before and a little bit later on, it said a lot of my grandmother had a second grade education, couldn't read or write, but she had a PhD in discipline. So that PhD in discipline carried me a long way. And then a lot of people just not giving up on me. A lot of people giving me second, third, and even fourth chances. And then certainly, last but not least, I believe it had to be some divine intervention in there somewhere, because part of the story talks about I'm the oldest. I'm the oldest of three boys, and I made it, and my other two brothers didn't. So I know in there somehow, some long nights on my grandmother's knees praying that God will find favor, or fate would find favor, or some man, some father would find me out in the streets and bring me on home. So it was, brother. I'm telling you, um, the conversation about what fatherhood is and who can be a father and who should be fathered, it resonates. Sometimes it was just a cat outside the liquor store saying, "Young boy, going home." So the value of the ideology of father for me was just absolutely critical, because I didn't grow up with one. So everyone and everything was a father, and there weren't always things that folks that would tell you what to do. A lot of times you just sort of learn what not to do, and listening to the old cats on that park bench drinking those 40s. Believe it or not, that's fatherhood in its own way. So for me, it was really, like I said, that PhD in discipline, folks giving me second, third, and fourth chances, and a lot of bit of divine intervention in there as well.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of lip service paid to fatherhood. Do you think that the lip service lives up to the reality? Do we value
I don't,
fathers like we should?
I don't believe it lives to black fatherhood. I think there's a fear of black fathers,
Mm.
to be honest. And fatherhood is something that I struggle with the most. I've got my youngest son just turned 18 yesterday, and my oldest son is 24. And I tell him that there's nothing in me that say that I'm getting it right or that I've gotten it right. But what I will tell you is I ain't going nowhere. I ain't leaving, and I ain't
Mm-hmm.
gonna be left.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when you think about how, and earlier you talked about the school systems and schools, and how they sort of bastardize sort of, we want father engagement, we want parent engagement. When we give them real engagement, if it doesn't come in this nice little box, then we don't want that kind of engagement. And the
Mm-hmm.
reality is that's not how fathers are. So I think of two things when I think um, with my sons. Anybody can be a father, and that's the first thing that I tell them. I said, I teach you to make good decisions and be respectful. And anybody, we've gotten into a spot where we will call my dad. No, anybody can be your dad. And if he has to be your dad, then when you get home, then your real dad gonna have a conversation. So I think just helping fathers understand, and getting back to that space where it's okay for the village to be the father. But you said something earlier, and I think it's sad that it's almost, when you say parent engagement or fatherhood, it's almost synonymous with our good sisters and women in education. But why would education behave differently? We're treated the same way by law enforcement. We're
Mm-hmm.
treated the same
Mm-hmm.
way by the court system. So education is not going to be this anomaly and say, yeah, we want you. Obviously, I think we have and are positioned to do some of the best, most powerful work. And I believe fathers can change education. I'm convinced of that. I mean, there's nothing that doesn't convince me of that. But I also think that the conditions have to be set. And then part of our challenge is from our own experiences in school. We still have sort of those experiences and those traumatic sort of rhythms that we've had during our own experience, that's the last place we sort of want to go.
You know, to the other brothers here, Ray and Sharif, you both have ran schools. How'd you open the doors? I'm super cynical. I'm a cynical Black man. I'm a cynical Black dad out here. My experiences from this side of the fence. What did y'all see in terms of strategies or techniques that people had to like get us in the room and yeah, as part of the equation?
Yeah, you have to be intentional about bringing Black men into the realm. And so when we send out parent communications or when we make phone calls, not only are we calling the mom that's on the contact list, but if the dad is on the contact list, we calling the dad too, unless there's a note that says we can't call the dad, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's important for both parties to get the same information, because a lot of times what you'll have is if they're not in the same household, then you'll get one set of information that's like that's pilfered through the initial set, and so like everybody's not on the same page in terms of like how they need to show up, right? And so you give everybody the opportunity to come to the table with suggestions, and if folks don't choose to come, it's not because you didn't allow them to come, it's not because they didn't have the information to come or the wherewithal, it's because they made the active choice to not come, right? But I think that when we are intentional about bringing Black dads to the table, we go above and beyond to make them feel welcome, right? Because as Peter said earlier, a lot of folks, when they think about school, they think about their own traumas that are associated when they went to school, right? And so we have to demystify the traumas that dads went through when they were in school to let them know that, hey, listen, this is your kid. We approaching this different, and the way that you can do that is by welcoming dads.
Mm-hmm. Some of them schools are still doing the same thing they did before too, by the way. Sharif, it's all your fault, Sharif. Tell us more.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting, I mean, I would say some of it is, could be my fault just from like an orientation perspective. Like I was literally trying to think, like, when did I deliberately say, hey, guys, we got to bring fathers in? I don't remember doing that as a team. I just remember fathers always being present, I mean, there's almost 3 decades in schools, and I just never remember not having dads always around, single fathers, married fathers. I think if I had to think about one thing, they could also see themselves within our school, right? Like we had Black men who were teachers. It wasn't like, hey, a Black school with 99%, white women, for example, right? Where they're like, hey, you know what? Like we're like, I think part of it was one, how we looked at community. And for us, community was inclusive of Black men, like that's I can't even think of anything deliberate. Like we didn't do donuts for dad and hey, we're going to do this specifically to try to get these Black men to come. They were just always a part of the community. And I think if you're community oriented, then you don't have a tendency to erase half the population, like it was just, I'm just like, hey, this was, I think because we were community oriented, it was like, that's where we spent our focus. Then it became a place that, parents, grandparents, foster parents, fathers, like the pastor, right? Like, matter of fact, one of the reverends in our neighborhood, he was at BMAC, and he always comes to BMAC. And you know what? He always would come to the schools too. Like that was just part of his orientation as the pastor at Bible Way Church. He wasn't the only one, but he was like always there. I saw him at BMAC. I was like, man, I haven't seen him since I left Shoemaker, but here he was. He was like, yo, man, I'm proud that this is continuing, right? Because, and here's a Black man. He didn't have a child in our school, but he was a presence. So back to son, father, uncle, brother.
Hey, bro, he had a whole flock of children in your school.
Exactly. That's what I mean. I mean, he didn't have but the fatherhood plus the manhood existed within him. And I think we respected that as a community. And that's why they were they were always there. You know, I was at my daughter's track meet and I saw Brother Swans. Brother Swans put a couple kids through there, but he was also a mentor, right? So I see him at a track meet an hour away from Philly, and we were talking about Shoemaker and, you know, and his presence and his children, but also all the folks that he supported within the community. So I think for me, it goes back to community and not trying to erase a particular population. And having a wider orientation for
you don't see all these signs. You don't see all these signs. You see.
Did you just do the hook? You just did the hook.
You see somebody from Shoemaker. No,
you did the hook.
You saw somebody from Shoemaker. You saw a person at BMEC that was associated with Shoemaker.
I see where you're going. Stop it, bro. Stop it. I see where you're going. I didn't know where you were going at first. I see. Stop it.
Anyways, let me say this. First, for people listening, you heard Sharif say a couple of times BMEC, which is this amazing conference of Black male educators that comes together in big numbers. And it's something that's rare, and you're not going to see it very often in the country because Black males who are in education are just as every bit as invisible as Black men who are involved in their children's lives, nationally speaking. And I'm talking about the media, somebody who works within storytelling and media and journalism and all those things. I can tell you, to me, it's a hidden property. But something I would ask all three of you, and Harrison, I'll bring you in on this. As Black males are being encouraged to participate in schools and in schooling, we're getting the message like, you're irresponsible if you're not part of this or whatnot. To be very honest with you, I like to leave a lot of things up to my wife to handle a lot of things so that we don't have no problems with the school. But I will say, I don't like the way that Sharif talked about donuts for dads, because I'm not going to ever diss donuts for donuts.
I love donuts.
I love donuts. And I can tell you this much. One of the ways that I did get involved was there was a very specific African-American male or African-American father night at school. And I was like, well, I got to come to this because it's called African-American Father Night. I can't delegate this one. So I went.
You're like, I can't delegate this.
Can't delegate this. There's some other stuff you can delegate. This ain't one of them. So anyways, I go, and then it became a yearly thing, and they had it every year, right? But it hit me when I went. It was the first time that I had ever been called to school for anything specifically, where it felt like it was a real invitation to me specifically. And just being there, it was like looking around like, oh yeah, this is interesting that y'all got us here for, you even called us for anything else anyways. But one thing I noticed when that group of brothers got together for that was that there's these stories that come up. Like, I think one of you mentioned, I think it was you, Ray, that said, you make sure the father gets the same information. It was pretty common to hear from fathers. They always call the mom, don't call me, and we're not together anymore, something like that. They never call me and let me know if it's a sick child or if it's something happening or whatever. They always call the mother first because of the assumption that the mother is the only one that needs the information. But anyways, this question I was going to get to with the three of you as a lay parent, on the outside. Do y'all ever think about the fact when you're trying to encourage Black men or Black fathers to get involved, that when we get there, we're going to be having a unique interaction because we're the only ones where the staff is nothing like us? Like, out of all your constituents, we're the one group there. Does anybody study that or research that or think through when you're asking us to come down there and do that? You're inviting us into a unique experience that no one else is having because nobody in the schools looks like us?
I got three things that I think I have an opinion about, and I don't even have a damn answer. So just know this. So I also think that we've got to be careful around conflating this notion of fatherhood and being involved like in school activities. And if you look traditionally and culturally, I mean, Black fathers have never necessarily been in the school or come to the school, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're not great fathers and we're not actively engaged. And there was a time where I thought that they just wanted Black fathers, to be involved because they wanted us to come down there and walk to school and control the kids and do their job. So I think part of it is, how do we bifurcate, but also bring the conversation back together, this notion of fatherhood, being great fathers, but also being engaged in things that are happening in school. And because I think it's cultural. The other piece is I experienced this a lot as a when I was deputy superintendent and superintendent is the court system have put so many obstacles in place that some of our fathers can't do anything above dropping their
Preach.
kids off. They
Mhm,
they
mhm.
can't be involved because legally there are policies that prevent them from being involved. And I don't want to send this message that our fathers and our black men are broken. That's not what I'm saying. But there's so many policies and procedures. If you have a record, if you've done this, then you can't be involved in this program. And we set up this sort of community-based restorative conversation to if a dad by happenstance had made a mistake and has a record, is there a path to restore that so he can have an opportunity to participate in his students schooling experience too? And I also find that that's a big roadblock to some of our folks as well.
Yeah, I think y'all are. I think y'all are trying to make it hard on us. That's the thing. All y'all educationists, like you send home so much homework. First of all, number one, you want
Good.
to make us look bad to our kids because you send it home. Teach in the school. Don't send it home in the form of homework and make me look bad to my kids because at home I know everything. I can't. Y'all can't be like showing me out. Oh, Dad, can you help me with this math homework, girl? What was the math doing in your school? What were they doing in your classroom? This is what I want to know. No, what? I think y'all do this on purpose, just to
So
Go ahead,
okay,
go ahead, brother.
one way to look at that, Chris, and one thing that we do at our school is that we try to build community with our parents, right? So, like in instances in which parents don't understand the work that's coming home, we bring parents in and we give them a crash course in what to expect in terms of like high rigorous academic standards and the type of work that their kids are going to be bringing home. We also provide them with online resources so that if they don't understand something, they could go to like a Khan Academy or they could watch a video in order to be able to coach their kids through a certain skill set, whatever, right? So I think it's really important for us to arm parents with resources so that our parents can be integral parts in the educational lives of their students.
I really wish to be, and I'm not even joking. I am being honest with you. I really wish that there was a way
Brace yourself, Harrison.
to test us as parents, for those that would want to volunteer for it at the beginning of each grade, to say this is what's going to be coming up this year or whatnot, just for parents, like adult learning, to show where our gaps are, right? Like, I don't know why learning has to stop at grade 12. We need much more robust systems like what you just said, Ray. Like ways to, like, I want the help sometimes. I won't be insulted. I will be insulted if you have my child bringing home stuff I can't do, and now I don't look like I'm the genius that I need to be for my children, right? So,
But why? But why? Like I mean, that's a very interesting. That's one way to look at it.
that is one way to
And I
look at it.
can
It's the
and I
best
can.
way to look at it. But keep going with what you're gonna say.
If my kid comes home with something, I don't know, whatever, and I don't know it, I'm not going to feel some kind of way. You know what I mean? Like, if anything, I think it's opportunity to engage, and they may teach me something, even if it's not like to proficiency, but there's like sharing your, what would be most curious about, like, how are they thinking about it? They are struggling. How, right? Like, I think it's an opportunity to engage. I ain't trying to master their homework. I'm really not. I may read their articles. I've read the same books as some of them, just because I'm like, oh, I'm so curious about that article, that book. But I don't know if I want to, necessarily enter. I'm not necessarily interested in mastering 12th grade again or 11th grade again, depending on the subject. But I
Stop
think
it.
it's opportunity to
Stop it.
engage. It
Because
is.
this is so,
Like, why you want to master their homework? Yeah, I
y'all so
mean, just
phony. Listen. Ishmael, what's his name?
Jimenez.
Right? He's a teacher. All these other teachers that you know. So if you had a problem with social studies or math or something like this, your network is packed as such that you could phone a friend. There are positions that parents can be in where the phone a friend is not going to work. Where you do not have anybody. Your child has just opened up 18 problems on a page
Mm.
And y'all need to stop with these worksheets too.
Yeah,
That's
but
the other
there's
thing.
also
Stop with the worksheets. What is
there's-
wrong with y'all?
there's community resources, right? So there's also libraries in the local communities that do homework help.
Sometimes.
So after school activities. So for example, at our school, we do a homework club, right? And so it's not restricted. So parents can pay for it, but if you can't afford it, we also provide slots in order for us to make sure that it's equitable in terms of who shows up or whatever, right? But we pay teachers to come in and give students additional tutoring, so that when they get home, they have their homework done, right? So like one of the things that could help with the situation is homework club, but then also looking at the resources in your community to see if you have libraries that are offering homework help.
Harrison, what advice? I think you're on mute there, brother. What advice would you give to this parent that I'm talking about? This father that doesn't want to look shameful. You know what I mean? We got pride. Y'all act like we don't have pride. We do. So
First of all,
you know,
the question that I have is, why do you send kids home with homework that they can't do?
thank you.
Yeah.
That's the thing that I had. That's the conversation that I have with teachers. We looked at research around homework. We looked at research around social promotion and retention. And my question is, so what is the definition of homework? Like, can we norm in our school building around what we mean by homework and why we send it home? Because if I send home something that you can't do, then I'm not sure that I've done my job as a professional. And I'm not saying, I mean, I know that there are exceptions to the rule. I know that there's a whole spectrum of those things, but that's part of our role because
sound like some homework bashing folks, right? These three.
Bruh, I feel so
disavow. I disavow.
I disavow too.
You know what? Y'all can disavow all you want. I feel seen. I feel seen and heard by this brother right now.
Hey, but sometimes you got to allow students to struggle with work. Not all the time, right? But there has to be some times where you allow students to struggle with work, so that you know when you need to put the interventions in and when you need to reteach a certain thing. So, like for example, if I send you home with something that I taught during the day and you struggle with it at night, that doesn't necessarily mean that I didn't teach it to you during the day. That means that you didn't get it. And so now we got to come back in and we got to reteach, so that when you take it home the next time, I know you get it.
But
so
I program myself all night doing it wrong.
Yep. And so then you got to come back in, and I got to deprogram you in order to do it right now.
Which makes your job
but it
much
depends
more
on.
difficult.
But it also depends on the child and the assignment, right? Because I do believe that, one of the things that we should be teaching kids, and this goes back to my opening, right, with like how we learned math in Iran, how we math here. Because what a lot of people will take that message and like, all right, well, I'm going to give them something much too easy, and they're just going to practice stuff that's not pushing them to be smarter, more resourceful, blah, blah, blah. Like what I want to do, even if they don't know how to do it, what I want to send them home with is, how do you be resourceful in this moment, right? Mm-hmm. Do you go to your notes and restudy? Do you go to Khan Academy or YouTube or Kill Parker's page? Like, what are you doing as a resourceful student that's not only self-advocating, but also like challenging yourself? Because I'm guarantee you a whole lot of educators will be like, all right, well, they're on this level, they're third grade level, I'm gonna give them first grade level, and that's all they're gonna practice. There's no way that kid is gonna advance and when we talk about like Black kids, even the ones who are intelligent, and how they slip backwards, they come to school or they come to a grade with the skills, and you just see them slipping backwards when you're not paying, you're not noticing. Some of it is because they ain't getting no meaningful, it's like just right. Some things are too hard, some things are too easy, and what's the just right? And it doesn't mean that they have it perfected, doesn't mean that they're not gonna struggle, but what are the resources that they can use? If they're armed with good notes and good resources and good website and the foundation, they can figure it out. I see people now like, I don't want my kids doing any homework. I don't want them to research. I don't want them to read. I just want them to come home and play and stop.
No.
Some work.
You know what? Home is for.
It's a lot of laziness out here in these streets. The wussification of American students.
First of all, I don't feel like you answered Harrison's question, because Harrison said they studied homework and they ask the question, what is it for? Which to me sounds like a good inquiry to start a bigger discussion about. Principal Kafele says they should not be sending homework that the children can't do. The purpose of homework is reinforcement, not new learning. Okay,
All right, let me give you one small example.
Principal Kafele, thank you for seeing and hearing
you,
the brother
Principal
against
Kafele.
these other
I'm gonna
mean
give-
person.
I'm going to add, and mind you, I grew, and again, I know we always talk about, oh, you went to that school, this same school, right? And so I went to Nathamosasa, then in Iran, and the way they looked at homework, and the way that American schools look at homework, I can see why a place like Iran produces far, the percentage of engineers and doctors that they produce in those countries out east. I can see why, right? Because one, like the intellectual rigor that it takes, it ain't just in school. Intellectual rigor should be happening and learning should be happening. But I'm going to give you an example of something I did not know, and I like had to push, and I failed at it. So one of the assignments one year, and this is elementary school, was the question of what is the it was martial arts theory class.
Oh boy.
Yeah. What is the pound of pressure it takes that it would take to that a dog exerts?
Mm-hmm.
Like what is the pound of pressure? I didn't know that. It wasn't something specifically taught. If it was, it would just be memorization. Right. And so, but what I did as an elementary school student, I'm literally calling around. We went to the library, right? Like, we're trying to find out, like, where do you find out I even called the veterinarian office. Like, hey, how many pounds of pressure, square inch does it take? Right. Like literally. And it was not something that I knew, but it was a thought process, the intellectual rigor and discipline of thinking and problem solving that I was going through. If I just knew the answer, then it would just be recall. And that is the lowest form of learning. You know what I'm saying?
So I'm going to agree with that part. But what I'm going to say to all three of y'all as educationists and me as the resident
we need more homework, not less.
Bruh, what I need for you to do is do an equity walk. I need you to take a bus and a half to work and then take one to go pick your kid up from school and take them home on the bus and spend your last $8, $9, $10 at a McDonald's because you ain't gonna feel like cooking when you get home or whatever, and take them back to an apartment by yourself in an apartment on the bus and get home at about 6:30, 6:38 and know that they have a routine of having to take a bath and having to get some other things done for the night and go to bed so that you can get to bed in time so that you can get on a bus the next day and go to work. See, education
is this the right way to hold a violin?
So education is with pensions, and college degrees or whatnot probably have never been on this bus. But what I'm saying is, then what you need to do is you also need to have multiples who have a worksheet that has 16 problems on it, and they're each stuck on number 7 or number 11 or number 16, and one of them is crying, one of them is ready to give up, the other blah 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 blah, before you start wondering what's going on at school during the day. Like, why am I doing this? Why is my house now, like, we're supposed to be in our nighttime routine right now. You're supposed to be eating and then taking a bath and then doing some other things or whatnot, maybe hopefully having some fun for a little bit before you go to bed.
Typical American response. I want to have fun. I want to have fun. Wait a minute. This is my problem. I think Americans, including Christopher Stewart, they have a schizophrenic relationship with some of this stuff. All right. Okay. So on the other side, Chris will be like, hey, this is you got to compete internationally. Let me tell you what they're doing internationally. They are
they're driving the kids to suicide.
Wait a minute. They're
doing internationally.
Not all of them. No, you just talked about TikTok. You just talked about TikTok, right? Like, it's like, no, shut this down. This is actually learning, right? But learning is looked at more comprehensive. I can tell you, as a kid, I had plenty of teardrops on my book report that I had to rewrite because it was sloppy. And last I checked, Mary McLeod Bethune was walking 10 miles to and from school, right? Boy, so we went from, and I'm not saying that that's right, but what I'm saying is we went from that to we just want to have fun. Like, no, you don't need fun. Get to work. Let's go.
What I just said, though. I don't think that you heard what I said.
I did hear what you said, and what I'm saying is
6:30 to 7 o'clock.
Listen, I'm not saying that you should be doing homework for 3 hours at home. an
Okay,
elementary
let's
school.
stop there.
I'm not saying that.
How long should you have of home? Because sometimes your window before getting home, bedtime, eating, bath, all that stuff is about 3 hours.
On that bus, can a kid read? Can a
So
kid read on that bus, or
Hey,
they playing TikTok and video games?
can
I've
they
seen
do
folks on the
homework on the
subway.
bus though?
I've
Can they
seen
like be
I've
writing
s-
on
I've seen
sheets
it.
and
I
stuff?
don't condone it, but I've seen it.
Not at all. I've seen New York City subways. I've seen parents reading to their kids. I've seen their kids reading to them, and so there's no
Now
idle.
I know why black fathers don't want to mess with y'all. This is
Hey,
what's
listen,
wrong with y'all
idle
system.
time.
I've seen it with black fathers doing it.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I've seen.
yeah.
Listen,
I
I
wanna go
just
back to the homework. I want to go back to the homework piece. Though,
yeah,
right?
go ahead.
So if you're struggling with homework and you have a really good teacher, then that teacher is going to be able to. So first of all, if you're teaching, don't just come in and check and mark if the homework is done. Really give these kids feedback in terms of like if they're doing their homework correctly. Go through the steps. If you go through the steps and you really like hone in, then you can give these kids like real-time feedback on like where they messed up, give them opportunities to do those problems over again. We use small group instruction to where if a kid didn't master a certain standard, then we're going back, we're reteaching that standard and we're teaching it a different way. If you're a teacher out here and a kid didn't master whatever it is you taught, please don't teach them the same way. They're not going to learn it.
Mm. Yeah, just like y'all don't teach black men the same way because we're not gonna learn it. Because everything you're saying right now sounds like some real BS. This is why we hate your school. This is like you talking about a violin. I'm telling you, bro, what it's like to take a bus home to pick up your like one bus to go to the daycare or to go to the school or to go wherever you got to pick up your kid, and another bus to get them home, and you got to get them something to eat on the way home. And then when you get that, they got to have a routine. You got to have a routine, and don't and God forbid you have more than one. Like if you have more than one, the whole homework thing, like I'm crying over problem number 8 and I don't know how to do this and blah, blah, blah. And then your cable then got shut off. Your internet then got shut off, blah, blah. Listen, this isn't about awfulizing the situation. I am saying that there's going to be somebody who knows exactly what I'm talking about though.
No, I don't disagree with you, but should we not
about.
give homework because you have a long bus ride home? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Stop it. You should have schoolwork. It's called school because it's supposed to happen.
It's called learning and learn. You also say like schools, all the learning shouldn't happen just in school. So what happens on the outside? Just the fun? And I'm not saying that you can't learn from fun. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying like there's certain places where the fun is prioritized over the intellectual rigor.
Let Harrison in here because
what you got, Harrison?
Yeah, he said
you done raised two young men. Like what you got, bro?
I think part of what we're also naming is just who has access to what. Sharif, I really appreciate how you downloaded the steps to your problem solving and how you found out the pound of the puppy. That's having access to resources, being able to call, being a problem solver. I also believe that learning should extend well beyond the classroom. I think we have to define what types of experiential learning opportunities. And then this is no lie.
They'll learn just from Tecmo Bowl, though. That's what he's saying. He just wants them to play Tecmo Bowl and have fun, and they'll learn.
Not Tecmo Bowl.
I also have to name
that video game I played, right?
But I also have to name that we're privileged, but I'll give it just a privileged sort of response. So we were living in Chicago. You know, I worked on the south side of Chicago about five and a half years. And I remember taking my son in Chicago. They don't have elementary schools as per se. They're all K-8s, and then you go to secondary school, high school. So I remember my son taking him to a school, enrolling him because we had just transitioned from North Carolina, and monitoring his progress, trying to be the good dad that I did. My wife, his mom, she did all the education stuff because of my position and my role and all of that stuff. But I remember about a year later getting his standardized test scores. Not that I even care that, but just for kicks and giggles. And I looked at his scores, and he'd gone from like the 99th percentile to like the 89th percentile. But yet his report card was like all A's.
Cap.
So I'm struggling. So I sit down with the teacher and the principal. And, I want to unpack what's going on. Kenny's a great helper and he's smart. So then I said, well, let's unpack this. I said, so so Kenny has the luxury of having two educated parents. My wife and I went to college. I said he comes home, he reads for an hour. He's a voracious reader, so he reads himself to sleep. He does his homework, he gets a snack, doesn't watch TV through the week, eats a good dinner, we have family time. Everything that you asked me to do, by your definition, I am a great parent. I've done everything you've asked me to do. Yet he has slipped from the 99th to the 89th percentile. Who owns that responsibility? It damn sure ain't no homework.
Mm-hmm. And
'Cause he
you're
does that
saying
every
this,
night.
you're saying this as an educator and two parents, both with college educations, both arriving at this place. Sharif knows this about me. I don't have your profile, but I still ran into a math problem last year with the son where the school was missing a bunch of stuff. And I had to phone people. I had to phone a friend and like, this just doesn't seem right. Now, I have had more than one crying child because of stress and overload of the amount of homework brought home. And sometimes I don't think teachers know. I've said this on the show a lot of times. When you've been through a lot of different teachers, because you've got multiple kids and they have multiple teachers, you get to see different styles of teaching. You get to see which teachers do what. And I am sorry, some of y'all feel lazy. Y'all seem to be loading our kids up with a bunch of stuff because we have other teachers that get the work done and get the job done. And they still have to do stuff at home, like read a certain amount of time when they get home or whatever. But it doesn't feel like we're teaching them in those classes. In some of these other cases, we have crying children that are sitting there where we start crying too, because we are like, this is too much. This is too much. Like, I feel it's too much.
Well, listen,
it's too much.
All these teachers at the beginning of school, they have their back to school night, right? And so what I would do is I would recommend,
not all, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Most of them. If you're in a school that's worth anything, then folks are having back to school nights. And so what I would recommend is you go into back to school nights and you having a list of questions that you ask these teachers in terms of like how they're going to pour into your child, right? So for example, one question that I like to ask teachers is, how are you going to get to know my child to know how to motivate her, right? And so I'm always interested in how a teacher responds or a teacher motivates the thinking of my child, because every child, all 25, depending on if you're in New York City, you got 21 now with these learning classroom whatever. Anyways, 25 kids, 25 different personalities. You can't teach them all the same, and you can't teach them the way you taught the kids last year because they ain't the same kids. And so you really got to get to know these kids like back and forth in order for you to know how to push them.
I would like to make a proposal here, which just is because y'all educationists, I'm tired of y'all. So listen, there's lots of states that have these like home visits as a formal system, not like as something that they do randomly or whatnot. I know in St. Paul, they actually got state money to be able to do them. And I think it revealed a lot to the educators that they hadn't, it improved the practice. It just improved it by doing home visits or whatnot. I don't know how much of a focus there was in that on them relating to also the fathers and the father part of this, because I was a parent in one of those districts and never got a home visit. But when Sharifi talking about like, I'm going to pull out a violin because the dad has to. Now I'm like, Sharif, you have to get on the bus now. Now you have to shadow that parent. You better shadow that. You got to get up at 4:30 in the morning in Minnesota in the cold and put that baby on a bus and get that baby to wherever they need to be and get them home the same way in sub-zero weather. And then we're going to talk about your violin. I'm thinking that we nationally need parent shadowing. That's what I need y'all to do. Shadow the dad. What do y'all think? Y'all down for it? You gonna do it?
I think as a concept, like, yeah, I like that. I think there's a concept. I know sometimes politicians will do that as well, just to get a better understanding of the constituency. That doesn't remove the fact that like there's work to be done, right? Like there's work to be done. Like I do think there's a tendency sometimes, particularly in this country, and mind you, this is somebody who spent some of their time overseas. There's a difference about how people think about learning. And we've talked about this on the show. We agree less than 20% of your time is inside of a building as a student, less than 20% of your time. So all the learning can't happen there. And we need to make sure that 20% is the most effective education as possible.
Yes.
And mind you, like even without just being in the community, being at the schools where staffers in Philly told me don't go to an S&T school because basically in Philly that meant like you were in the hood and people were struggling. And I was at Turner.
What's S&T?
S&T. They basically, when I went to my first week in the district, staffers said don't go to a school that starts with an S or a T.
Oh, okay.
And they were basically profiling. They were racially profiling the school. So of course I did the exact opposite because I'm oppositional like that. So I went to Turner, then I went to Shaw, then I went to Shoemaker. All very similar profiles and very similar stories without the weather of Minnesota. But folks like struggling and making sure that we had a high percentage of foster parents, et cetera, all the things. And yet folks were still doing, the work. Now, what I would say, we did make sure that, because, to your point, when they get to middle and high school, they're seeing a lot of different teachers, and sometimes they're not coordinating. And so each of them shouldn't be given an hour of homework, to a seventh grade, like, hey, you have an hour, you have an hour, no, I agree with that. So there should be some coordination, but I also see just nationally, like, they don't need to do anything. Just let them go. Like,
but that's the thing is, like, I can't look at it nationally. I'm looking at it. I'm a literal father with literal kids, and there was a difference when they were in elementary and they each had one teacher each. Then they get into the middle grades, and now each one of them has multiple teachers. Right.
This goes back to mindset and systems, though, right? Like, that's part of what we talk about, why schools and districts sometimes are dysfunctional. It's not just the thing, it's the systems, right? If you're not communicating on a team of teachers, the whole point of you being a team is that you're also working together in service of their child. And if you're not talking, exactly. I mean, so that's a problem, not the idea of homework. Right, like the idea that they're not
homework is still jacked up. I'm sorry.
Instruction is jacked up in a whole lot of places. Like, forget the homework. Instruction is jacked up.
Yeah.
So there's I don't know if you guys have ever done this. I think I may have done it like once or twice. But there's a Bring Your Child to Work Day thing that happens every year. And so one of the things that we're going to implement next year, probably in January, we're going to have we're gonna have parents come in as their kid day, right? So that you
Shadow type of thing.
You can now see and be exposed to how learning happens in an actual school during the school day with your child, so that you can see it through their lens in terms of like how they're learning, how they're processing, and like and just how they approach certain things when put in certain situations, right?
You've heard me challenge crowds when we have had live shows before. I dare parents to go spend a day as a high school student for a day and reacquaint yourself with it. I dare you, because all the lovely stuff that you remember with your letter jacket or your prom or whatever it is that you hold in your mind, well, you think working is bad. You'll go back to work with a better attitude the next day. You'll come back to work like, oh yeah, I hated y'all yesterday, but I went to high school for a day and now I feel better. Harrison.
And there's schools that push for equity for teachers and staff members to do that, principals to do that, also follow. So not just do it from my office or from here. No, you are a student. Here's your roster. And then we're going to debrief at the end of the day. What was your experience like?
But Reef, if you're in them if you're a principal and you're in them classrooms every day, you don't need to do that because you already know what's happening.
That's a big if.
That's a big if, right? Because we know there are a whole lot of folks that ain't see.
Right. But I'm saying it to folks that are school leaders.
I think even that's different, though. That's different. Like, following a kid all day and seeing what their 7 hours and 4 minutes looks and feels like from their perspective is still different than coming to observe and being a presence. I'm talking about like literally sitting in a student's seat. What does that seat feel like? What does the room feel like? What does, can I go to the bathroom feel like? What does the lunch feel like? Like all of that over a course of a day, not just being a presence in the classrooms,
Yeah, but that's not what I'm talking about, Rick. I'm not talking about going in and doing observation. I'm talking about dedicating your day to being in all them classrooms or whatever. And then, so therefore you can get multiple perspectives and multiple outlooks in terms of like how all your kids are learning, not just one particular kid that you're following. And so, You, as principals, y'all need to be in these classrooms. Y'all don't need to be behind desks answering emails, doing TikTok and all the other dumb shit y'all doing. Y'all need to be in these classrooms giving feedback to teachers and giving feedback to students.
Well, I just want to
Now,
say
yesterday
on
you
that
said you were
point,
going to do a TikTok with the
yeah.
handshake and the dancing in the
Oh, whatever.
auditorium.
Don't do
Now
that.
you're fronting in front of everybody.
Don't do that.
Don't front
I
in
never
front of
said that, bro.
America.
Hey,
Don't do
Reed,
that.
you know, for
Don't
you
do
to be a devout Muslim, you should do lie a lot.
Well, listen, because we are coming to the close of the show. I want to wrap it up. I want to give the last word to Harrison, to our guest today. What I also would like to do as we do this, I would like to show, for this show, we're talking about fathers. I'm glad that we were able to see that educationists are the actual problem. They don't care about your kids or your kids' night. They don't care about your job that you have to take your kids, whatever. They don't care about your kids' night, nothing like that. They want to ruin they want to rain on your parade. They think your kids should just be like in South Korea, where they go to school for 24 hours a day and then burn out by 23. Anyways, what I would say to Ray and to Sharif, if you could wrap up in your final comments, this is what I would ask you. If I'm a dad who does want to do a good job, but I don't feel like I know all of this stuff that we're talking about, I'm listening to a lot of this and a lot of it's flying over my head. I hear acronyms. I hear kind of inside baseball and school stuff. What would you just tell me as a layperson? Like, what's the best I could do? Like, tell me some actual small strategies, small things I could do to be good. That's all I want to do. I just want to be good at this. And I have people breathing down my neck who don't expect me to be good. They don't think I can do this, and they're doubting me. What would your advice be to me as a parent? Start with you, Sharif. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I would say, one, make the presence felt. And I think sometimes it's not always about like the answers, it's the right questions. So really decide what questions am I going to constantly ask, not only of the school, about like, and Ray hinted at some of this, but how, asking, how do you support kids who are struggling? How do you help them when they need help? How do you see them? What do you do when you're frustrated? Like, I would ask educators those type of questions, but I'll also make sure I'm asking my child like the right questions. I don't need to have all the answers for their homework and so to speak, but I should ask like what their experience is, where do they feel challenged, which teacher challenges them the most and supports them, where do they feel the most marginalized. Like, I would be asking those type of questions, because the one thing that a child wants to see is that there's someone who has their back. It doesn't mean that they're always going to agree with them, doesn't mean that they're always going to like just move barriers out of the way, but they want to know that the person is there. So as those fathers who are, maybe in spaces that are like just more challenging, I would say, like, one, you belong. Don't ever feel like, even if it's 99% white women in your building, you belong because your child is there. But I do think arming yourself with the questions, and maybe that's something that we can also, collaborate on, fellas, about, like a op-ed or something, but just sharing, again, resources around like what they can do as fathers. And again, I would love, like Swans and Pastor Jones and those, like, I will ask them, like, what are some of the things that they saw that kept them coming back? And, just finding other additional ways to codify it. But I think the main thing is making sure that you are an absolute presence, nonstop in the academia, even if you had a bad experience as your own self as a student, whatever, like, you don't have to, let's try not to replicate your bad experience by just releasing your child into the abyss, because everybody ain't gonna, there are a lot of kids, Black kids, who still talk about their experiences. Even in the most Tony privileged, high end, whatever, however you define that, schools. And we saw this like right before and after the pandemic, where it was like Black in these super wealthy, privileged schools. They were saying, this is my Black experience in those schools.
Social media
we have to
campaigns.
Recognize. Yeah.
For people listening, there were social media campaigns for several high-end schools where kids made accounts that basically said being Black in Dalton, for instance, $50,000 a year school. and those threads, they showed a lot of like trauma that was being
It
recreated.
was searing, right? Like reading that, and these are like kids. Like, I mean, it was like gut wrenching.
Yeah. All right, Raymond, sir, what would you tell a father who just wants to be good, just wants to do the right thing?
First and foremost, if your kid goes to a school that puts an extra emphasis on play, run. because as Black people, man, we don't have time to be playing in these schools. I remember my grandmother, who didn't have a high school diploma, but she made sure that I knew that going to school, I was going to school to learn. She never said, "Hey, you're going to school to play." She said, "You're going to school to learn." And so putting that focus on learning, I think, is extremely important. The second thing is building community, right? So, like, I'm sure that you're not. Hopefully, you're not the only Black parent there. And so, building community with people that look like you, so that no question is a dumb question, and you can ask questions to the folks that are in the community. And I think it's tough being a Black man in education, right? It's tough being a Black man in education, so it's going to be even harder to be a black male parent in education, because a lot of the stuff that happens, and I know we talked about it a little bit, but I don't want it to be so taboo to where we can't talk about it. But like a lot of it is feminized, right? And so finding ways to navigate the space is extremely difficult. So it's important for school leaders like me, school leaders like Reef, when he gets back in the helm, to make sure that we're creating communities to where folks can come out and they can unpack their thoughts. They can unlive the traumas that are associated with education that they receive, right? So that we can heal as a community, and so that we can be better beacons and stewards for our kids to learn as Black men.
All right, before we get to Harrison, because we're going to give you the last word, sir, I will just jump in and say, do not run from schools if they allow your children to play, because play is a good thing for children and for childhood. And it also
play. I'm gonna give you an example.
Okay, give me an example.
Okay.
It's gonna be a bad one, but give me your example.
Fine. No, I got.
And clarify what grade you're talking about, Ray.
All right, so cool. I'm gonna do this for you, right? So I have kindergartens, right? I got some kindergartens that come from affluent backgrounds, right? That are reading Harry Potter books and can tell you everything that's in that book. I got some folks that are coming to kindergarten that can't even identify letters. So it's a huge range in terms of like where you're coming in. And a lot of that is based off of fluence, right? And so there's some times when, you have a kid that may come from a free and reduced background, but that their parent is on their ass, letting them know that, hey, listen, this is what you need to do, because I don't want you to be in the same position as me. And so therefore they're coming in, they're reading Harry Potter books too, because their parents are doing the things that they do. They're creating agentic moments. Shout out to Charles, in order for their parents to be who they need to be, right? I mean, for their kids to be who they need to be. But in most instances, I don't see, and I see when by the time they get to third grade, you got kids that are still trying to fill gaps, while you got the other kids that came in reading Harry Potter books that are just way more advanced. And then by the time they get to 12th grade, these are all the kids that are in the same competition to go to the best colleges. Ain't no time to play.
So first of all, let me say Harry Potter is boring. They're very long, verbose English books that nobody should read. So I don't care. I don't care who's reading them. Written by a transphobe. Listen, my older
Ray
kids
loves Harry Potter because he always brings that up as the example. He's like,
and I'm just like,
they read Harry Potter.
Like, now, if you said they're all reading Iceberg Slim, I'd be like, okay, all right.
Judy Blume,
well, listen, my oldest kids read those big, thick, ugly books of Harry Potter, and we still have them in the house, and the younger ones won't touch them because times have changed. I think even in the attention span of kids, things have changed over time. This is what I will say. And they're boring. So I just, I just gonna put that out there. Like I tried to pick them up to model it for the younger ones, and I got through like 4 pages of them
You were,
jokers, and I was like, this is boring.
you were sitting
This
in there
is
frightened,
I
like,
was
let me
yeah,
model with this Harry Potter
let
book.
me
Like, you
model
need to
this for
stop
you.
it.
Yeah. And I'm like, I started reading them, and I was like, muggles and mugglers
See,
and
but you were going against the
Quidditch.
research,
What?
Chris Stewart. The research says model reading what you enjoy reading, not reading something that you know you ain't gonna like, you gonna put out in 15 minutes. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I feel like parents need to hear this. Like, I wasn't a failure for looking at it and going, oh man, this is boring. I wouldn't read this either, But this is what
I've never read a Harry
yeah,
Potter book,
it's
so
terrible. This is what I say to parents. I don't have any like wisdom that comes outside of my like what I knew as a parent, but as the parent of multiples, what I would say is listen to your kid very intently. Listen for their frustration, listen for the things that they're happy about, whatever, when you ask them about school. The whole thing about how was your school, fine, just nothing, or, whatever, and you don't follow up and you don't get any more information, is going to make it so I think at some point you're going to have a surprise. Like you're going to have like a big problem at some point that you didn't see coming, and it's because you weren't hearing all the things you needed to hear. So listen intently, have an ongoing dialogue that never stops, and make that dialogue, one where you get all the information you need. You don't have to be an expert. You do have to be an investigator. So when you hear things, investigate them, and be militant about when you do have to be involved. Like with the school, you do have to be somewhat militant, because educationists will tell you things at times that is more about the way they want to order their work rather than what your child actually needs. I have different types of children. Some of them are in the math side of things and the science side of things. Some of them are on the art side of things and the performance side of things, whatever. And that has taught me that one plan isn't going to work for everybody. Like one thing is not going to work for every kid. Some kids need play as a way to access the information, right? Like some kids need some kinetic energy to be blown off. They need to like get moving on some things, and sitting in a classroom isn't always going to be working for them. I'm not going to do the learning styles thing, because apparently I've been told there's no such thing as learning styles. That was a myth. Whatever. I don't know that it was a myth, but anyways, listen to your kids, and be militant when you have to, and get involved when you have to. And you don't have to know everything, but you do have to ask a lot of questions. Harrison Peters, sir, you get the final word on this, on the best advice that we could give for fathers that don't feel like they know everything, but feel like they do want to do a good job. Like there's a need in them to do a good job.
I'm thinking about Ta-Nehisi Coates. And when you say fathers who don't know everything, but definitely, Ta-Nehisi said it's not necessary that you believe that the officer who choked Eric Gardner set out that day to destroy a body. All you need to understand is that the officer carries with him the power of the American state and the weight of an American legacy. And they necessitate that of the bodies destroyed every year, some wild and disproportionate number of them will be Black. So my thing is, when I look at the current education construct and what it is to our children, it's everything that you said. Be present, be militant, push, ask questions. But I always say step back and just say, make sure you're being a father. And if you're being a strong father in whatever sense that we've defined it this evening, you can't go wrong. And then be a father to another young man or another young lady as well in your ecosystem.
I love it. There's so many different ways to do well at this. There are different, when it comes to men and it comes to fathers, fatherhood, we talked about this at the beginning of the show, feels like a destination, but fathering is a verb, and it's something that we all have a capacity to do. We could all be leaning in a little bit. And if you got some surplus fathering in you, hey, maybe your kids got affluenza and your kids are good or whatnot. Maybe you got some surplus fathering to be able to lend to others. And maybe that would just be what being a good man is about. Maybe that would just be like what being a good citizen would be about. Definitely what being a good Black man would be about. I know that there are many Black men in my life coming up where the amount of fathering that was going on across different lanes. I had a Franken father when you put them all together. They had all very different skills. They came in my life in different points. It was like putting together a Frankenfather. And I think we need more of that for kids because not everybody's going to know everything. Appreciate you, Harrison, for joining the show today. Much appreciated. How can people find you? Let people know how they can find you.
Yeah, at Harrison Peters to Twitter, or hit me up on mcelleaders@gmail.com.
And I would definitely encourage people.
Y'all just had a conference, right? Can we find out about your conference? Yeah.
Yeah, please share about. I was just about to say, please share about because that was also super dope, impactful, important, needed, all the things.
Let's hear it.
Yeah, our work centers on leadership. We believe, that teachers make the magic happen, but we also believe that leaders create those conditions for the magic to happen. We also know that there is new research that's out there that talks about the impact that leaders have on learning. And for the first time in decades, the leader of the building has almost the same level of impact on learning as teachers do. So that's why we believe critical and we believe in leaders of color, because we also know that in order to figure out and solve for this huge gap in teachers of color, we need leaders of color, because I'll drive all the way across town to work for a leader that cares about me, that believes in me, but I wouldn't walk out my front door and walk across the street to a school where the leader doesn't empower me. So we believe leaders matter. So that's the work of MCEL. Check us out on mcelleaders.org, and would love to connect with anybody that's interested in just being in the club.
All right, y'all. Y'all got your marching orders. Every time I hear about a group like this, an organization like this, you know that I say the same thing. Sharif knows this, so he probably knows what's about to come. We have got to stop spending money on coffee and different things and not supporting organizations like this that do good work. I love to hear about great things that people do and good work, but I even like it more when people right afterwards go and hit a donate button or go and find some way to say, like, you know what, for this month, I got $30 for you. I got $10 for you. I got 15. I got $8.50. I got $7. I got $3. I got $1 on it. I got $5 on it. Whatever you got, man. Just this is what I need people to start doing. Everybody can be a philanthropist. Just get that through your head. Everybody can fund the revolution. You hear about great work like this. The one thing that we always need is resources. So every time I hear about good people doing good work, now I didn't put myself on the hook. Now I got to go give MCEL some money. But this is, and call me out next week if I haven't done it. But this is what I want y'all to do. If you got 5 on it, you got 10 on it, you got 50 on it, whatever. Whenever you hear this good work, find it and donate. Do something good for these.
Appreciate y'all, brothers. Y'all doing amazing work, man.
Appreciate y'all. And fam, thank y'all for listening. Listen, send us an email. This is what I want you to do. First of all, if you like the show, share it with others. We're trying to make sure that we keep getting the word out. Number 2, what I need y'all to do is leave a review, a good review of the show, so that others can know what they're going to listen to and what you like about it. The last thing I would say is email us with show ideas, with critique, with whatever you want to say. Listen, hey, go off though. Just send us an email. Here's the email address. It's info@8bh.org, and 8 is the letter 8, and BH is for Black Hands, so it's just 8BH. It's just 3 digits.org. Info. Send us email and let us know how you feel about the show and anything we said tonight that you find objectionable or whatnot. Let's argue. Anyways, we appreciate y'all. This has been another episode of the 8 Black Hands, episode 191. We'll see you next week for the last show of the year, which would be episode 190.